There we are. Okay.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to, is this our fourth? I think it's our fourth
Yes.
debate from the Dickens versus Tolstoy book club. So, hi. You poor guys, you're like up at like 2 a.m., 11, 12. But this time I think we're going to try to keep the Oliver Twist debate to like maybe an hour or something like that. I'll be on Tolstoy's side again, and Carolyn's on Dickens again. So, feel free to like put your rating and your thoughts and everything like that in the comments as well, because I know this one, I feel like people really loved it, or some people really didn't. But Carolyn and I will definitely tell you our kind of unbiased thoughts and opinions before we get started, and then just the overall structure of the live show too. We're gonna just start with some of the author's life. Dickens was he 25 when he wrote this? I think.
I didn't get his age actually, but I think he was around.
Yeah, 20. I'm like 99% sure. And then we're gonna go into writing, characters, the plots, and then just the intent of Oliver Twist and stuff like that. So, it's 2 a.m. in Australia.
Oh gosh, no. People staying up.
So, okay, what do you want to start with? Should I go into like some unbiased thoughts?
Yes, please.
So, maybe I should give a little plot too. We'll go into spoilers like later, but basically we just follow Oliver, who is left in the care of a parish house, and then from there he gets apprenticed off to like a coffin maker, and then from there he escapes to London and everything that happens to him there, essentially. So I gave it like 3.5 stars, I want to say. Like, I enjoy so much more the experience now of like thinking about this book and just like talking about different things in it. But like while I was reading it, I wasn't really loving it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I got so bored in some places. I felt like I really didn't care. I was actually really surprised at how like unentertaining I found Dickens in this one as well. So I actually like switched over to the audiobook. But like, I think on the whole what this book like actually accomplished, and especially what Dickens wanted to do with it and what he wanted to show in London and everything like that, I was like really impressed and really into. But definitely like I do have a lot of points like against the book, I want to say. So I just gave it like 3.5, generous 3.5. So yeah.
I completely agree. For me, I gave it 3 stars, and that's mainly because I loved the start. I thought that it was really entertaining and really great, and then I got to the middle and it kind of lost me a little bit, and I also ended up listening to the audiobook as well. And I sight read as well, but it was just to the point where I wanted the story to come to life more, and sometimes when I listen to someone else tell it, helps me get more into the story. And by the end, I loved the ending. So it was just that middle portion that kind of lost me a little bit, and I sort of felt like Oliver was even lost a little as well. We'll get more into that later, but I did give it 3 stars. And I really liked it. It was just, in comparison to like we've read Great Expectations, it just wasn't entertaining, magical Dickens quality.
There's like tons of 3.5, 2.5. Like it was just the plot wasn't really that compelling. I agree. 3 stars too. It had a lot of like really, really strong parts, I want to say, but then others I felt like he just kind of like lost focus, and I don't know, there were some things I wasn't a fan of. But so before going into like spoilers and stuff like that, I think you have a few things to say about like Dickens growing up or whatever about his life and the book.
So something that I just wanted to talk about was how Dickens wrote posthumously. So Oliver Twist was published in serial form in 1837 all the way until 1839, and was eventually released in 3 volumes in 1838. Like Emma said, the story is surrounding this main orphan Oliver and all of the plights and horrible things that he encounters, and it's, I think, one of those original orphan stories that I feel like so many other books were based off of or inspired by. So that's something that I really found interesting, was how these certain aspects of the story, I could kind of feel the essence of other stories within it.
Yeah.
And then something that I wanted to talk about was how the author's life and experience related to the book. So Dickens, at a very young age, his father was in a lot of debt and was actually imprisoned in a debtor's prison with his entire family. And Dickens was the only one that could make money for the family. And so he got a job at a blacking factory. And it was just a really horrible experience for him. And that actually was a great influence on the story of Oliver Twist and growing up in really harsh environments with a lot of harsh people. And it was a direct result of the story. Oliver Twist was kind of a direct result of what he experienced as a boy. I also feel like that's so much pressure to put on such a young child, because at that time, I think he was around 12 or 13. He really was a child. So I can't imagine going through that as well. Something else that I wanted to talk about was how I believe in the introduction, I remember reading about this one character. So Fagin, who is the main antagonist of the story, was based off of a real person that Dickens encountered at the blacking factory, I believe. So it's all of these different events coming together to kind of inspire this story that I think is really interesting to see how these events have impacted his life, or what he writes about and what he wants to bring the reader's attention to.
Like I think I don't know, I feel like I wouldn't recommend this book to people who want to like start like reading Dickens. I feel like it would really like put me off, or not like put me off, but I just wouldn't enjoy it as much as like starting, for example, with like Great Expectations and stuff like you guys are talking about. But anyway, do you want to go right into writing?
Sure.
Okay, so we're going to talk about, I guess, the writing of Oliver Twist and just what Dickens is doing. Do you want me to start, or do you want to start?
You can start.
You start? Okay. Oh, goodness. Okay, so the first little point I wanted to discuss, I feel like Dickens in Oliver Twist, like he's a little bit of just like an anxious writer. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm talking about the parts where he kind of just barges in onto the scene. And like he did that a little bit in the Pickwick Papers, and he does it, you know, like in later work. And I don't mean like necessarily Dickens, but just for confusion's sake, I'm just going to say that it's, you know, Dickens, because it's not necessarily him as the narrator, author, whatever. But specifically like in Oliver Twist, he like stops to literally like defend his own work, and he just like steps aside, stops the plot for a second, and he's kind of like, okay, let me just take you away from Oliver's storyline for a little bit and let me like explain to you why we're like running away to the countryside, or why we're going back to visit Mr. Bumble and stuff like that, just in case the reader like isn't clear, or he's like worried that the reader is going to persecute him for messing up the plot and interrupting this train of events and stuff. And a lot of these passages too, he calls them maybe deemed unnecessary, and like I would argue that they are unnecessary, honestly. I think it implies a lack of trust a little bit between the reader and the author. Like he's not trusting us to just kind of go with the flow, where like he literally has to step in and explain to us why he's working this way, kind of thing. And I think it like also increases just like this sense of like insecurity that Dickens has when he's writing, because like you could argue that there's very much like an entertaining sort to these little preambles of him explaining like where he's going and stuff. But I think what would have been like more entertaining for me and more just so much more better would have been if like we had been able to fall just like naturally into the story and like forget that it is a book. But then Dickens just kind of like, he's like, hey, here's the author, here I am, and let me like talk to you. So he just kind of like dispels this whole thing. I think it would have been a lot stronger like if a book can just like kind of speak for itself. Do you know what I mean, kind of thing? And like if we compare kind of Dickens talking about this stuff in Oliver Twist to like Tolstoy and what he does in War and Peace, or if you want to call it Tolstoy, talking about like history and all of his essays and stuff like that, like I think that serves like a specific goal in relation to like the plot and the overall thing of War and Peace. Whereas like the little break-ins that Dickens does in Oliver Twist, I just feel like they're just kind of really jarring, mildly like self-congratulatory, and I just feel like they really don't fit like the tone or the topic of like, I don't know, the whole book in general. So I didn't love those.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that is actually my first point.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So I'm going to try and shed light on that. So what I have is he is basically just addressing the reader, making his presence known, kind of telling you, making you aware that this is a story and that he's telling you a story. Because I feel like since the story of Oliver Twist is pretty bleak and pretty dark, and there is hope, but it's always dashed out. And I feel like him addressing the reader can be seen as he's trying to tell you that, it's just a story in a way. So from the very first page, Dickens makes his presence as the narrator very clear. He addresses a lot by saying on the first page, on page 3, the first page, it says, "In this workhouse there was born on a day and date which I need not trouble myself to repeat, much as it can be of no possible consequence to the reader in this stage of the business of it all." So he's addressing this as, this is a story, and you are the reader, and I am the storyteller. And I feel like there is a sense of sit back and enjoy in a way, because I feel like you said, he's not trusting because he's kind of pulling you in different directions. But I do think there is some kind of whimsy to just enjoying the story as it is, and just seeing what he does with that. So I liked getting addressed as the reader, because it kind of, I don't know, I mean, I do and I don't. That's the interesting thing about what Dickens does, because sometimes he'll address the reader and I'll think, oh, like, he's making it known that this is true and that we are being entertained. But at the same time, I do agree with you, and I feel like he could do it a little more in a less showy way, kind of like, how great I am, which Dickens does love to do. And I think that's part of him as a person. He loved to entertain. He loved to put on a show in terms of theater. He loved just making people have fun. And I think that that's what he was trying to do with this story as well, in terms of addressing the reader.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah. Sometimes, I agree that he just kind of they got so long in some parts, and I was like, okay, please stop. But yeah. And okay, just talk about the writing of the characters specifically. I don't know if anyone else found this, but I just found it very repetitive, the way that he would constantly describe them, almost using the same little bag of adjectives, or these little kind of epithet-y things that got attached onto them, and various phrases that denoted who they were, or they would even have catchphrases that they would say every time they kind of came back onto the scene or something like that, which I honestly found not only tiresome and kind of unoriginal, but it also just fixes them in this one state and ties them down a lot, where they always seem like they have to act this one certain way, or they have to be according to the set of adjectives that Dickens has given them. For example, Mr. Bumble, I think I read the word parochial and all of these things attached to him 50 billion times, which is fine, because that's very much a central part of his character. But when he almost seems to scramble up the sentences and then rearrange them a little bit differently each time that character comes back onto the scene. And we'll talk about this a little bit later for Fagin too, but just this huge array of just anti-Semitic language to describe him every single time he was on the page. Or for example, for Rose, it was just always this freshness and niceness and flowers and stuff. And that's fine, because he's, at least for Rose and Bumble and stuff, because he's trying to tell us who they are, but it just literally seems sometimes I would read the same sentence twice. And then when I think of Tolstoy, literally I can think of no single word to sum up a person, whereas when I think of Dickens characters, I'm they are so easily put up in 2 or 3 words. Yeah.
No, I completely agree with that, and I do feel trying to look from both sides. I feel sometimes Tolstoy does use repetition, but he uses it in a way where it creates a lot of gravity. And I feel with Dickens, he does that in certain cases, but I think he overuses it just a little bit, especially when describing characters. I think his characters are, well, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later too, but I think his characters are singular in a way where no characters are like Dickens' characters, but I do completely agree with your point. And something that I kind of want to talk about a little bit as well is how he's funny when he's not supposed to be funny. So one of the I remember when I started the book, reading the beginning about, so this is kind of getting into spoilers. Should we, I don't know if we should say spoilers or not. Okay, well, I might spoil it if we haven't finished it or not. But this is just in the beginning. In the beginning, when Oliver's mother dies, they're talking about how Oliver is left to the different people that are there when she passes, and I have it written down. I just need my glasses because I'm blind. Okay. Let's see. It's on page 4. So something that I love, like I was saying, is that we have this really bleak, depressing, it's a death scene, but Dickens, in a weird way, makes it funny. So it says, now if during this, totally, totally tripping over my words. Okay. Now, if during this brief period Oliver had been surrounded by careful grandmothers, anxious aunts, experienced nurses, and doctors of profound wisdom, he would most inevitably and indubitably have been killed in no time. So I love how you expect, like, oh, he's surrounded by all these wonderful people, they'll take care of him, but he's like, no, he'll be killed. Which I think is so funny because Dickens wants to make you laugh, especially in the dark times. And I feel like that's kind of one of those qualities of sort of getting through life, is when you have these dark moments, trying to make light of them, trying to make yourself laugh and get through it in the best way that you can. And sometimes humor is that best way. So I did love that about Dickens. But I do, going back to characters, like what you were saying before, I do sense the same thing, though, like in trying to make you laugh and having this comedic quality, it can demean the characters slightly. So it's always a double-sided.
That's all I have for writing.
Okay. I have one more, which kind of
go for
leans into the one that I was just talking about.
Nice.
So although the story is very comedic, it is full of sorrow. And I think that that's something that we really don't experience, or we haven't experienced in Pickwick Papers. And I feel like going from the lightness and the comedy of the Pickwick Papers to Oliver Twist, which is a very dark, bleak,
it's so dark.
And something that I didn't expect as well. So it really took me by surprise, and I enjoyed seeing that Dickens could do both. He can do comedy, he can do tragedy, and he can mix them together.
I agree.
So there was tragedy, there was loss of hope, and there was death. And then I also have another quote, which I will try not to trip over. Okay, so it's again on page 4 from Oliver's mother's death. The surgeon deposited it, Oliver, into her arms. She imprinted her cold white lips passionately on its forehead, passed her hand over her face, gazed wildly round, shuddered, fell back, and died. And I highlighted certain words, so I'll just share them. So cold white lips, Dickens is addressing Oliver as an unnamed being, which I think is so sad because, he's barely been alive, and he's barely a person. And then the last part, gazed wildly round, shuddered, fell back, and died. And I was just kind of taken aback by how horrible that was. And I was just sitting there like, 1 minute you're laughing about how Dickens is trying to make a joke about him being killed, surrounded by all these, caring people. And then his mother is just walking away in this very brutal way. So it was a really interesting juxtaposition, seeing how he kind of creates all these different emotions, makes the reader feel one thing, and then on the same exact page feel something completely different.
I know, I love that part too throughout the book. Yeah. Okay, if we move into, oh no, you go ahead.
Sorry, just something that I wanted to add was that even though we get like barely any moments with Oliver's mother, I felt this connection with her that, I don't know, in a weird way, even though we didn't hear from her and we didn't really get her story, I don't know, I just felt some like a little tug at my heart whenever she was mentioned. So
yeah, I also totally forgot about this part too.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I totally just Anyway. Yeah. Okay.
So it's something to do with the alphabet.
Oh, that it's an O this time.
Yeah.
He's going through it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's just kind of this random.
Yeah. Oh, that was funny.
Do you want to go into spoilers if we talk about characters?
Probably.
You guys, okay. I think my first few points are pretty not spoilery, so we're fine. But okay, yeah. So for the whole character, I feel like we have the most to say about this because, like Oliver Twist, we have this huge cast. I mean, not as big as War and Peace, but whatever, it's fine. Yeah. So the first thing I want to say, like, there's absolutely like no kind of defense or debate about this point at all. But I just want to say, like, especially if you are like thinking of reading Oliver Twist, or if you want to go into it, there is a huge amount of anti-Semitism, just focused around Fagin, who is one of our principal characters. I think we mentioned, is literally on every single page that he's in, like what Dickens is doing, the language that he's using when talking about Fagin. It's just so pervasive, and it's literally in every single scene throughout the whole book. So yeah, on that note as well. And did yours come with a preface? Yeah, right?
Yes.
Like Dickens' own preface? Yeah. Mm-hmm. He says that kind of these criminal characters that he's writing about have to be in delicate disguise to be contemplated by the general public, which is kind of in response to the Newgate fiction, and the whole glamorization of criminals that was kind of going around in that new kind of fiction that was happening. So Dickens wanted to kind of take that away and like take all of this romanticization and stuff out of the criminals. And so he kind of leads us to believe that he's done away with these costumes. And I think in Oliver Twist, like, he kind of works towards a more realistic person for sure, but I almost felt like it was only their kind of physical reality, both in terms of their attire and their surroundings, that seem more real, because I still feel like the whole Den of Thieves in Oliver Twist, like, they were kind of caricatures to me. Not so much as in like the Pickwick Papers. Like, I felt like the Pickwick Papers was extremely extreme with that stuff, but like Fagin, for example, like we were just talking about, he's still based on all these really hateful stereotypes. I feel like Sykes is just kind of this brainless beast that's literally I feel like he was at times just interchangeable with his dog, honestly. And then Nancy, I found so, like, she was just like, she was the only one I was interested in this whole book, but I still feel like she is the just kind of epitome of the fallen woman who can't get back up into society, even with the help of like the angel, like Rose and stuff like that. So I think, like, at least in Oliver Twist, like Dickens' language about like these cold, wet, shelterless streets of London is just so much more acute at like showing us the habitats instead of the inhabitants, if that makes sense. Because I still feel like the people take their cues like more from this fantastical fairy tale kind of plot that they're in, rather than just like the true nature of who they are. But yeah.
I again completely agree. I feel like it's, to a point, it's unnecessary. Like, we understand you, or is that even, I mean, I know it's like a product of history. Whenever reading a classic, I always have to kind of combat these, how they write women, how they write different racial groups, how they write different religions. And it's just really hard to read as a modern reader, because you see the fault, and it, like a lot of people are saying, it's uncomfortable, and it is. So try and like put your your mind in Dickens' headspace and understanding from a different point of view. It's just hard as a modern reader. So completely agree. Don't think it's necessary. I think it's quite horrible, honestly. So yes, and I'm glad that we shed light on that, because it was really bothering me every time. Even the same thing with the Pickwick Papers describing, was it his name, Joe?
Joe.
Fat boy. I'm like,
Joe.
please stop calling him the fat boy. That is so demeaning and mean, and I don't know. I know that Dickens, I feel like Dickens is this guy that's trying to like make all the jokes, but sometimes the jokes aren't funny. It's like, you know? So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Something that I want to mention in favor of Dickens, once again, cannot see. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a quote from the introduction,
Yeah.
and it is from G.K. Chesterton. It says, G.K. Chesterton said it beautifully. As a nightmare, the work is really admirable. Characters which are not very clearly conceived as regards to their own psychology are yet at certain moments managed so as to shake to its foundations our own psychology. So talking about how even though these characters are very one-dimensional and they can be described in one word, they do shake you a little bit when certain events happen. In particular with like certain deaths and just certain moments, thinking that these characters are very flat and they aren't very deep and they're kind of surface level. Even, well, like, because of that, I don't know, at certain points I did feel affected by them, and I did feel like shocked by certain things that happened, and it just depends on the character. So talking about characters individually, should we start with Oliver just because the book is named after him? Okay. So something that I found so incredibly admirable about Oliver was that in the face of all of this treachery and sadness and death and sorrow and hardship, he was always good. Like, he was
That
always...
doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, but
No.
I was just like, oh, okay, like, thank you for, I don't know. I feel like what you were saying before is that talking about Dickens not really trusting the reader, I did feel like I could trust Dickens to sort of keep Oliver with his goodness. Like, yes, is it realistic? Probably not. But as a story, I did feel like it had that typical, like, hero, always good, you know, kind of arc, which I think is because I don't know, and I want to talk about this a little bit with plot as well. Like, with this plot of always, like, one horrible thing after another horrible thing after another horrible thing, even though these horrible things are happening to our main character and it's really hard to read, you always knew that you could trust Oliver in remaining good, whether that's believable or not. You know?
Yeah. I feel like that's so boring, though, and also not realistic, because this comment, though, you should have been more like Malfoy.
Oh my gosh. That
yeah,
would have been interesting.
Yeah, to talk about Oliver, like, he's just not a believable character, and it's not really his own, like, fault. I feel like it's just so Dickens at the time, because, like, it's so, like, there's just so much dissonance, because, like, Oliver is just, like, this inherently good person for seemingly, like, no reason. He just seems like he's born that way, even though he's surrounded by so many people, and, like, every other person, I want to say, in this book, like, takes their cues and their character development from their surroundings. Like the Den of Thieves and all these boys in the parish house, like, they're very much grown from their circumstances and their environment and their station in society and stuff like this. But then Oliver just seems to be this, like, completely random exception that doesn't make any sense why he's always, like, good, even though he's the one going through, like, literally just so much awful stuff in his life. And, like, the worst conditions that he lives in, and, like, facing death, like, multiple times. He just seems to, like, randomly maintain these values and this, like, sense of morality that, like, the other people around him don't at all. So it just seems like, I don't know, like, Dickens is good at showing what, like, flawed justice systems and the time in 1837 and stuff like that can do to people who are living under these really awful conditions, and what, like, desperation they can lean towards. But then Oliver's goodness, I feel like, is just this excuse for him in the plot to, like, win back his inheritance, because his inheritance and all this money is just like, based on the fact that he maintains that morality. So I don't know, it's just, like, I feel like you can't have both in the same story without it getting really confusing about how Dickens thinks people are made, because I don't think you can have both, I want to say. I don't know. Yeah.
For argument's sake, I do feel like there there is a lot of value in a character that can be good and bad. Like, I'm Team Dickens, but we're going to talk about Tolstoy for a second. Like, in War and Peace, there were so many characters, like Andre, for instance, where he, you had moments where you really hated what he was doing, you really hated what he was saying, and then there were other moments where you loved what he was doing and you loved what he was saying. So and it makes them real because that's how people are. So I completely agree. I do feel like it is unrealistic, and it kind of made him feel less true and more like an actual fictional character, which I do wonder, was that Dickens' intent? Like, did he want us to have a sense of, we can rely on this character, we know that he will remain good, so we can just watch how these events unfold? I don't know, it makes me wonder in a way.
Yeah, like he reminded me a lot of like a young like Mr. Pickwick in that way kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because like that's very much who like Pickwick is as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. But as well, I don't know if your edition or anyone else's edition came with like a little essay at the back. Because mine did. It smells so good.
Who got you that beautiful book, Emma?
I don't know. This girl named Carolyn.
Oh, really? Do I know her?
Yeah, you might. Because mine came with this essay called The Young Dickens. It's by Graham Greene. That's a great name. And like another thing that I wanted to kind of talk about is something that he points out in his little piece, which is that the good characters in Oliver Twist, like there's like no realistic way that they would be able to kind of trump the bad characters in Oliver Twist. And this guy like identifies that as one of the most kind of fairy tale and unrealistic aspects of the novel, because like there's no harm, he says, in like Oliver Twist like being that fairy tale, and like we know it's just a story like you were talking about before. But I think there's kind of that gross misconception in real life that like random kind people can like put a stop to a whole bunch of evil that we see and save like the innocent people, because like really that doesn't happen. And on top of that, like I think we were talking about how Dickens is like 25 when he's writing this, and he's seen like so much evil in the world. But what Graham, my good friend Graham, points out in the end there is that like Dickens hasn't really witnessed very much good. And so I feel like the good in Oliver Twist isn't really like good. It's just kind of nice. Like, are these people good or are they just nice? Because he says that he tries to achieve and represent goodness, but all he manages are powdered wigs and gleaming spectacles and a pale, angelic face. Well, on the other hand, I feel like the evil in Oliver Twist, like Oliver Twist is such a dark book. Like it's actually so grim and bleak and full of despair and like super traumatic and violent events as well. And so I just don't feel like it's like it takes a little bit of that believability out of it, because I feel like the moral good in Oliver Twist is nowhere near as good as it ought to be to like defeat the caliber of evil that's kind of in this book. Because I feel like when it ends, there's almost like this false sense of triumph, because I'm just like, oh, Oliver, he did all of this. He's still good. He got out of it. And now he's living a fairy tale with all of these nice people. But when the book closes, like, did you remember old men signing like helpful financial documents and Rose like collecting flowers in the field? Or like, are you left with the image of like Nancy beaten to death and like Sykes like making his own gallows and stuff like that? Like, no, like I'm so left with those huge, like awful images that are literally just burned into my mind, that I feel like there's like this just unequal balancing of the good versus evil in Oliver Twist and stuff.
Yeah. And I do feel like that adds so much weight to those horrible moments, because it makes you kind of look at Dickens and see the trauma that he experienced and how it directly relates to the characters and what he makes the characters deal with, because he is the creator, obviously, as he makes it well known. And I do feel like it adds so much more sorrow, thinking that he doesn't really know good, so he has to make up what he thinks good would be. Which I feel like, I don't know, it's just the saddest thing. It's so sad. I do feel like he gets a bit better at it, though. So that's what I feel like, and I feel like we keep mentioning this, or I keep mentioning this in the debates, where I feel like we're starting really strong with Tolstoy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm really excited to see Dickens in the later years, because I feel like all these points do get improved upon. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's right. I just thought this was really funny. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's also true. Yeah.
I do want to mention, do you have anything you want to mention about character?
I don't know. Just mostly the way that he names people. I don't know. Do you have one more point for character or no?
I just wanted to talk about Nancy, but you can.
Oh yes, no. Talk about Nancy.
I
really want to talk about Nancy.
Okay, Nancy was my favorite character.
Yes.
I knew she was going to die. I just knew it. I was like, there's no way that she's not going to die. I just have this feeling, and I don't know if it's because Dickens, foreshadowed it in a few different ways, but I just felt like there was that one line where Rose is telling her that she can have a better life, and she's saying, well, this is all I've known. This is all that I'm worth. And I feel like that was a point where I was just shaken.
Yeah.
I was just like, this is horrible, because talking about what Dickens has experienced, and the different people that he's met, trying to think that so many women felt that way, and so many men as well. But in terms of, a woman character in a Dickens novel, I feel like is always interesting to keep your eye on. So just like how and I think that she's the opposite of Oliver, because we do have these good qualities of her where she is this incredibly deep character, to the point where she has these moments where she's working for evil in a sense, and where she sees the bad and kind of tries to be good. Like she tries so hard to be a better part of the world and the goodness, but evil is always trying to consume her. And I feel like that's what I wanted from all of the characters. I wanted them to be multifaceted, and I feel like Nancy was the epitome of the deepest character, and that's where you create those connections, because you want to understand them and you want to see how they think and how they feel. And I think through Nancy's character, it was beautifully expressed.
Yeah. I know she was like the most, I think, interesting, like for me as well, and also one of the only people that I actually like cared about in the book. Like I honestly felt like next to no connection to anyone, or just like I felt like I didn't really care about anyone. Yeah, I don't know if I just like was not invested in the plot, or like as time went on with the plot, and especially the people we're following, like I just really lost interest. Especially once I knew that like the people were just kind of fixed in their, who they were and stuff. But Nancy was like the most interesting one to follow, I feel like. But yeah. The last point I just have for characters, like talking about Dickens' naming convention and like his methods for naming his characters. I just feel like I love it sometimes, but if I had to say something negative about it, which I do have to, I would say that like I just feel like the way that he names people allows him to be kind of lazy and just like use their names to fill in their personality and their character, rather than focusing on giving them like their own essence and stuff. And also their name then becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy almost, where they just are who they're named after. Like Mr. Bumble, he literally just stumbles around and is a bit of an idiot. Or Rose, whose name is like so nice and delicate and flowery. Or like even Oliver Twist, because I feel like his name is just kind of indicative of the ways he's just kind of like thrown around and twisted throughout the plot, essentially. But I just feel like honestly Dickens sometimes relies too much on like the character's name to supply them who they are. And then it also, you could like also argue that it's a bit of a spoiler, I want to say, for the reader, because like from the minute someone comes on the scene and their name is Mr. Grimwig, like I really don't need you to tell me anything else. And so it kind of just like fixes them and what role they're going to play essentially in the book. Or Noah Claypole, who's just like this man made of mud who's just ready to be molded from anyone that comes his way, kind of thing. Whereas I just never feel that way with Tolstoy. I feel like I never know really who someone is. But I know that's like very much part of Dickens' thing, and like sometimes I really do like love it. And there are lots of strong things you could say about it, but especially in a book like Oliver Twist, yeah, I didn't love it. So
Yeah. I think I agree with you. There were some cases where I really did enjoy it, and there were other cases where I didn't. Something that I read about somewhere about Dickens was that he would carry around a little notebook, and it was his like, notebook full of names. And everywhere he went, if he heard a name that he thought was interesting or that he liked, he would write it down. And when he was trying to come up with a character, the name was always indicative of who the person was and how they acted and how they behaved. He never had a full character until they were named. And I think that there's such strength in that because you are sort of molding the perfect person that you want to put in your story. Whereas I feel like with Tolstoy, he has the character fully fledged, done completely, deep and true, and he just has to think of the million different Nikolais that are in the world. So it's like, oh, let's name him Nikolai, which is fine, and it makes him feel more authentic and more real. But in comparison to Dickens, he goes about it in the more, their name says something about their personality, about the way that they behave, about the way that they are treated, and I do feel like there is different strengths in each one.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, that's all I got.
Me too.
Okay, cool.
Plot?
Yeah. Did you want to start off plot? What do you have?
Sure.
Okay.
So we kind of talked about the things that I wanted to talk about already. But the first thing that I have written down is despair leading to more despair. This book is just, when I tried to think about, okay, how did Dickens structure this plot? It was just, we start out bleak, dark, and we go to more bleak and dark, and then we go to more bleak and dark, and it's just like down, 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 down. And then in this deep downward incline, we have these little moments of respite where it kind of like, becomes stationary and flattens out, and it's like, oh, okay, possible hope, and then it's like dashed and down, 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 down. So I felt like I was just like, can it get any worse? Like, oh my gosh. So in terms of entertainment, it was entertaining because I'm like, well, what horrible thing's going to happen next? But also at the same time, it was kind of like I was striving and wishing for something good to happen. And it was just like kind of taking that trust away from the reader and the writer, thinking, well, this good thing is happening, so I'm just waiting for the shoe to drop, kind of thing.
Yeah. In terms of like just awful things happening, I feel like just to talk about like death, as like kind of part of the plot, I feel like it's a gigantic theme in Oliver's Twist. Yeah, but like his journey, I feel like Oliver's journey very much resembles either like a funeral procession or just straight up death, because he starts at a parish. He eventually winds his way to like a coffin maker's. He literally sleeps in a grave, Dickens says, and then he eventually descends into like what we could call, I guess, hell, as the London underbelly, where he is tested and faces like a whole bunch of trials. But I feel like with that in mind, like we know that Oliver is eventually saved and these like angelic people help him and stuff like that. But when we talk about like death as part of the plot and stuff, I feel like, and it's not like the same redemption is just so not a possibility for like anyone else in here that we know who's part of the London scene. And I feel like his whole like meditation on death, like there's so many nice quotes that like, or I mean, yeah, I guess you could call them nice, that like I highlighted about death and stuff like that. It's just like such a more, I don't know, like everyone else is just so much more helpless in this book. Like when we talk about like Oliver's little friend, Dick, at the parish house. Oh God. I think that was like the saddest scene in the whole book for me. I like literally almost cried. And so like for these people, like Dickens frames it where death is like a mercy and almost like a peace, because like Oliver's friend, like he knows he's going to die. And then he says that he counts it as a blessing that he can die young, for perhaps his sister wouldn't recognize him if he were older, and it would be better if they could play together in heaven. Yeah.
Oh God.
I know. Yeah, so I feel like like in terms of Oliver and like the other people, there's just like this huge divide when we talk about like redemption and like the journey of death, I want to say. And even Nancy says that Oliver is better off dead than among the London streets where she lives, and that he should lie dead in the ditch and that his young bones should rot there. This isn't really like a point against Dickens or anything. I just think it was really interesting, but also shows like the difference as well between Oliver and the people around him, like in terms of development and who they are and stuff. But
yeah, and I feel like it's interesting because when you read the Pickwick Papers, you sort of get this lightness and this comedy from London life, and you see this like upper middle class of men, and you know, it's kind of flat to a point because it's just showing you everyday lives of this middle class. And I feel like when Dickens portrays this incredibly harsh reality of the lower class and the hardships of London life and the brutality that comes with that, it's just incredibly heartbreaking. And I remember, reading that scene and just thinking that that was probably one of the saddest things I've ever read, because it's just to the point where they aren't even like heartbroken themselves about it. It's just part of life. It's just like, well, that's how it has to be. And it's that lack of hope, and that even with Nancy as well, like there's nothing better. We can't really do anything to change. Like that is our fate. I think it's incredibly heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And very different from Pickwick Papers. Like that was my
different.
like, yeah. So it's really interesting how he switched entirely from those two stories and those two atmospheres. I feel like the atmospheres of both novels are very different.
Yeah. To talk about the Pickwick Papers though, that's actually good, because I wanted to say like this being Oliver's first novel, Dickens' first novel. I feel like just talk about the structure of the plot and stuff. I honestly felt like if I had to say and like construct a negative argument about it, I would say it was like very kind of choppy, and like it constantly just seems like it bounds back and forth between like one small adventure or mishap or the other. And like eventually, right, they do get all like connected, but in the beginning, I think Dickens' like first attempt to write like a cohesive story, like I don't think it went as well as it could have gone, because like the first half of the novel honestly felt like 4 or 5 different sketches from the Pickwick Papers that were a little bit separate, and the reader can't really see how they're all going to line up and stuff. But it didn't really like, I don't know, it didn't really capture my attention because of that. And then the way that they all do connect at the end, like by that point, I didn't really care. Do you know what I mean? Like I was just kind of like, I don't know, it just felt like a very low sense of stability. It felt very shaky. I don't know. And like just the way it was structured, I think made me feel really disconnected from everyone. Yeah.
I agree. On a slightly different note, I have an Anne of Green Gables quote that I thought perfectly described Oliver Twist.
Okay.
I'll share. Okay. So Emma recently read Anne of Green Gables after so long of me being like, you're gonna love it. And she did. So I was like, this quote fits perfectly. I'm gonna mention it in the debate. So that quote is, "My life is a perfect graveyard of buried hopes." Isn't that like just perfect?
No. That is perfect.
It has death, it has dashed hopes. So basically what my point about plot is, it's like the same thing of what I was talking about before. This book is a perfect graveyard of buried hopes. That's it.
I love, well, like I don't love that, but like I love yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Because I remembered us talking one of the first times that we ever Skyped, and talking about different books that we loved. And I think I mentioned Anne of Green Gables, and I was saying like, oh, it's set in Canada. Like, how have you not read it? So yeah. So glad that you did.
Oh my God.
Something else that I think I want to end my points with plot on is that the book ends with, I think, one of the saddest deaths of Nancy, but it also ends with finally a brighter future for Oliver. So after all of these hardships, we do have this sense of brightness and lightness and hope. Talking about those buried hopes, they are almost, taken up and sort of given to the reader finally. It's like this whole time we're reading this book and all these horrible things are happening. We're waiting for hope. And it finally appears at the end. You could complain that it was a little too neat of a bow, like all of these things, all these horrible things happened, and it was just explained outright in kind of a confusing way.
Yeah.
But I think I did value the fact that Dickens finally gave us that hope that we eventually wanted.
Yeah.
Yes, I know that you want to say something, so say it.
No, okay. Yeah, I feel like at the end, like I agree.
Mm-hmm.
No, I actually don't agree. I feel like for Oliver, right, that's great. And like he's gonna be happy and his quality of life is gonna be boosted.
Yeah.
But I feel like for his character, like he's still gonna be the same exact person. And what does that even mean? Like he's still gonna be good. Like he doesn't change in whatever aspect like he's surrounded with, which is like cool if that were, I guess, realistic, but I don't know. Like in the end as well, or actually it's to start with the preface and then to talk about that, like Dickens says that he wants to show Oliver as the principle of good, surviving all evil intention and circumstance that comes his way and triumphing. But I feel like throughout the whole book, like I think someone said actually, like the whole Oliver Twist isn't really about Oliver Twist. He's just kind of like the catalyst for stuff to happen, because he really has like zero autonomy in here at all. And he's just propelled and dragged from like night to day, and like the scenes of darkness with Fagin and his friends, and the scenes of like light and flowers with Rose in the countryside. But they're all like circumstances outside of his control. So I feel like yes, Dickens says that's what he wants to show, but it just felt like less a celebration of like Oliver's innate goodness as the victor over like all of this evil in the world, but more just like kind of a hopeless look into the forces that just kind of drag us all around without our permission. But also just like kind of on that point as well, I think it's a completely like unachievable ideal or message that's being communicated, because if someone like Nancy or if someone like the Dodger or Sykes or anyone like that, if they tried to live like Oliver and tried to be that good, they wouldn't have a fairy tale. They would literally just die. So it's just, I just felt kind of...
Yeah, or like, what would the readers think if he gave Nancy a better ending? Like, if she didn't die, if she did prosper, like how would the reader at that time take that? Someone mentioned Oliver got a happy ending thanks to Nancy, and I think that's true. And of course she is the one that is brutally murdered, and Oliver, after really not doing much to help himself, I feel like a lot of the times he was kind of putting himself, even though he couldn't really help the situations, I feel like at some times he could. And I think what I wanted, or what I wonder, is how the reader or how the story would feel if that was changed. Like, for instance, let's say Nancy got that brighter future that was offered to her, and Oliver ended up, I don't know, dying in whatever way, or maybe succumbing to the evil that was presented to him at such a young age. Like, I want Dickens to like try different things. I feel like he sort of took the easy way out and was like, well, it's devil's side.
Yeah, I know.
But
yeah, I know.
That is all that I have for plot.
Okay. Yeah, I think I have one more maybe point to close it off. Okay. Like I think Dickens is really good, and like I feel like it led to a lot of discussion about like things that people were not talking about at all, especially because of like the romanticization of crime that was going on in other novels at the time. So I think Dickens is like really good at showing us like what's happening and the conditions that people are living in. But then I think I was reading like an article or an essay or something like that like he's good at like leading us and like showing us things, but like when it comes, maybe it's not necessarily his job, but when it comes to like discussing more of like the systems that are causing these problems and like providing possible solutions. Like he just kind of like, glosses that over. And like, I'm not saying that's his job or anything like that, but I wanted more of like more than just the little hints that like Dickens gave us towards the like injustice of the justice system, because we get a few scenes in Oliver Twist, like we got a few scenes in the Pickwick Papers of kind of the farce that's going on there and like what causes the divide that's going on and the parish house problems and all of the like really heavy societal things that are going on at the time. But I just think like because the story features Oliver as this like hero of goodness without reason, I want to say, there just seemed to be like this strange like dislocation of intent or something like that, where he's not sure, like, does he want to show us like the real victims? Does he want to show us what causes people to be victims? Or does he just want to like show us Oliver, who's like this perfect boy, essentially? Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think he did a good job at like writing about those things and stuff, but yeah, I don't know.
No, yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Something that I think kind of goes into that was like sort of, so do you want to talk about intent now? Like why Dickens wrote the way that he did? So something that I remember learning about Dickens was how he was a law clerk. He was a clerk at a law office. At the time that he was writing this, or maybe before, I honestly don't remember. I don't have that noted, but I do know that he did work as a law clerk to the point where a lot of the scenes involving crime were directly related to what he experienced and the cases that came about at the law office. So I did think that was interesting. How he takes these different moments and kind of puts them into his novels to shed light on certain things, like what we were talking about before, talking about like why did he write this particular story. I think it was kind of one of the only ways that he could really express his own opinion on the lower class and the plight of an orphan, and also like the law system and the what is the word I'm looking for? Like the issues of that's an Emma thing. I'm doing the Emma thing. The issues that come about and like the problematic things about the lawsuit. I cannot.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Okay. So many thoughts happening in here. But yeah, so I feel like it's interesting to sort of see the things that he experiences, the things that he feels about different aspects of life, particularly with law, crime, different classes, and sort of presents it in his novels. I also feel like he's always trying to say something to the reader. Like, yes, he's trying to entertain, but at another point, he is trying to sort of bring attention to these certain things that I feel like this is kind of like a different thing. So the people that were reading Dickens's novels were from many different classes. You had people of the lower class reading his books. You also had the Queen reading his books. So I feel like what's interesting is that you can kind of look at a Dickens novel as affecting all different groups of people, all different kinds of people, and trying to think about like, oh, well, I wonder what all these different people thought about the things that were mentioned in his novels, and maybe they affected those people in different ways. So I do feel like that's interesting to think about, talking about intent and why it was written.
Yeah, I actually, the last point I said was on intent. I thought we were on intent.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And I feel like I think my final point about intent, and I think like my final point, period, is like what I love that Dickens was doing, and what he does in every story and every book that he writes, is he's just he loves storytelling. Like, you can feel it on every page. And even if it doesn't affect you, and maybe you don't like the story, or there's something about it that you I don't know, have an issue with. Even for me, like, there were a lot of things. I gave this book 3 stars. There were a lot of things that I didn't love about this book, but what was so evident was how much he loves storytelling, and you can feel it.
Yeah.
So I think that, he did it because he loved it. So
yeah. Oh my gosh, look at that. 1 hour exactly.
Wow. Didn't think we could do it. We did it.
So I post the new poll.
Yes, definitely. And then we can share our favorite quotes.
Oh yeah. And you guys too, we'd love to hear
Yes.
Your quotes and any thoughts you have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me just there we go.
Should I share my quotes while you're doing that?
Yeah.
My first quote is from page 108. Let me get to it. Okay. I also wrote in my little scribbly pencil, "Wow, Dickens," in the margin of this quote. I do not think you ever will. I have been deceived before in the objects whom I have endeavored to benefit, but I feel strongly disposed to trust you, nevertheless, and more strongly interested in your behalf than I can well account for, even to myself. The persons on whom I have bestowed my dearest love lie deep in their graves. But, although the happiness and delight of my life lie buried there too, I have not made a coffin of my heart, and sealed it up forever on my best affections. Deep affliction has only made them stronger. It ought, I think, for it should refine our nature. I love
that was
that.
like the best one, honestly. Yeah.
He's so good. My favorite part of that is, I have not made a coffin of my heart and sealed it up forever.
I know.
Because we have all of those images of death and the coffin makers, and I feel like talking about it in terms of your life and your heart being in a coffin is just like
so good. Okay, yeah, I highlighted that one too, but I honestly really had not a lot of favorite quotes. Like, I loved when Dickens like describes just kind of the environment and stuff. So this one's kind of like that. I think it's when Nancy's like going back after she talks to Rose and stuff. But it says the girl had taken a few restless turns to and fro, closely watched meanwhile by her hidden observer, when the heavy bell of St. Paul's tolled for the death of another day. Midnight had come upon the crowded city. The palace, the night cellar, the jail, the madhouse, the chambers of birth and death, of health and sickness, the rigid face of the corpse, and the calm sleep of the child. Midnight was upon them all.
Yeah. Oh,
like, that was so good. I love that one.
Yeah, I think he's great at descriptions, like, especially in making them really enchanting. Like, you can give him any plain old scene, and he adds such magic to them. Okay. What are you laughing at?
Sorry, I was just looking at the votes.
And then my next one is from page 238. The boy stirred and smiled in his sleep, as though these marks of pity and compassion had awakened some pleasant dream of a love and affection he had never known. As the strain of gentle music, or the rippling of water in a silent place, or the odor of a flower, or even the mention of a familiar word, will sometimes call up sudden dim remembrances of scenes that never were, in this life, which vanished like a breath, and which some brief memory of a happier existence long gone by would seem to have awakened, for no power of the human mind can ever recall them. I just thought that was beautiful.
Wow. I don't know. I think, like, I don't know. I don't really have another favorite quote, but something I just really loved, which I found was so cool, is when the Undertaker is talking to Mr. Bumble, Mr. Sowerberry, his name is, but he He designed his own snuff box in the shape of a coffin.
Oh, yes! I was like, wow. Very on brand for you.
I just really like that. Yeah, I just thought that was great. Yeah, so.
That is, yeah. I remember reading that and thinking like, wow, this guy is dedicated.
Okay, yeah, so for I think I said I posted the poll on the community tab of my channel, so there's 90 votes in so far. Yeah, I don't think it's very much of a surprise, but
who's winning?
That would be Tolstoy. Yeah, so yeah, but thank you so much. Oh, I don't know.
Do you guys want? Oh, what were you saying?
I don't know. Oh, when someone asked, yeah, there's just a few questions I thought we should maybe answer.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's the wrong thing. I'm sorry.
I always do that.
Yeah, Nicholas Nickleby is.
I can check.
Yeah, that'd be great. Our next book is Anna Karenina, if anyone was wondering.
The one and only.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're both really not liking it. I'm kidding.
Oh, awful.
Horrible.
Awful.
Okay. Nicholas Nickleby. I don't think will be this year.
You have to wait until next year. Oh my gosh.
Wait, is it this year? No. No, it is this year. It's in September.
Oh, really? Wait,
Yeah.
is that our next? That's our next Dickens?
Yep. Sorry, my eyes just like totally skimmed right past it. Yeah. So after Anna, we have Nicholas.
Yeah.
Hope you guys are enjoying your reread of Anna Karenina. We are loving it. Thank you. I hope that you guys are enjoying it. I love seeing everyone's posts about it.
I gave it 4 stars.
You did? Okay.
I did. Yeah. I don't know. Oh, and the full schedule is on Insta, right?
Yeah, it should be on your Instagram story highlights, and then also, I don't know if you have it in your description for the announcement of Dickens versus Tolstoy, like the first.
Yeah, I think I pasted the whole thing. Yeah.
I think I did too.
Yeah. So it's either on Instagram under like the Dickens or Tolstoy heading, or you can go to the announcement video, and we just listed the whole gosh darn thing. So yeah. Okay. So the vote so far, we have 168. And that's 19% for Dickens.
You can get the poll on Emma's community tab.
Or maybe it's on your home or subscriptions too.
Yeah, I think it should be in your subscription section. How can you see the full schedule if you don't have Instagram? It should be in our announcement videos. Like when we first announced that we were doing this book club, it should be in that video description.
Yeah, and we have wait. Do you have a playlist too? I think we both have playlists for like the book club on our channel too.
Yes.
With every video.
Mm-hmm.
So it should be there too. Yeah. Yeah. It's 81% for Tolstoy at the minute. So.
I'm sorry, Charles.
Wait, we have to do ours. Wait.
Oh my goodness. Is anyone gonna be surprised? No. All right, do a countdown.
1, 3, 2, 1. Oh, look at these guys! She did a.
Thank you. I know.
Wow!
Yay! There they are. Yeah, Tolstoy. I'm sorry, Dickens. I'm sorry. I tried.
I think I might switch when we get to the, once he develops more as a writer. Okay, or not. I'll just stay Tolstoy forever.
No.
Yeah.
No. I think, that's what I'm really excited about is when we get to his later works, because I know so many people love Our Mutual Friend, A Tale of Two Cities, Great Expectations,
David Copperfield.
There's one other one that I'm thinking about. Something in Sun.
Did you say of two? Oh, what?
Something in Sons. But
Oh,
it's
Dombey and Son.
Dombey and Sons. Yes, yes. I'm excited for those.
Yeah.
If you guys want to put, you guys want to put your votes, please do. How about Carolyn feels betrayed? Thank you, Lucy.
Okay, yeah. So final, I guess, I don't know. I mean, the tab will be here for the rest of the existence of this channel. But now Tolstoy's at 76 and Dickens 24.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I'm ready to crush on Levin. Same. Been crushing on Levin for more than a year.
Oh my gosh. Aw, okay, yeah. Thank you guys for coming to that show.
Yes.
Yeah, also really fun. People have been asking Carolyn if we have a vlog coming for Oliver Twist. So basically we don't. We both were talking, we were both Skyping, and then we were like, oh, did you start your vlog? We were like, no. We only have one clip. Literally one clip for both.
I might make like
I'm gonna make a video. I'm gonna make a video.
Yeah, I'm gonna make like a tiny little video about Oliver Twist. I just feel like after the after the emotional, like, I don't even know, the like life-changing journey of War and Peace, I was just like not ready to I don't know, to talk about Dickens, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and the live show will be saved too on my channel. Don't worry. Yeah. So, anyway, all right. If that's it, I guess we will sign off.
Enjoy Anna Karenina. We will see you. The debate for Anna Karenina is going to be on my channel the first Saturday of
September. Yeah.
I actually don't know what day it is. Hold on. Let me check really quick. Oh, hold on. Not on here. 10 years? Okay. The 4th of September is the first Saturday. So that should be the Anna Karenina debate.
I'm excited.
So excited. And we're switching teams.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be defending Tolstoy. Anna will be defending Dickens. Oh my God. Okay.
All right, we're going to go now.
Getting a little silly now.
Okay. Okay, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining.
We'll see you soonish.
Yes.
Okay.
Reading.
Okay. Okay. Ciao.